Welcome everybody to this edition of Top Voices. We are a global insights exchange podcast, and we're very fortunate with the guests that were able to come and talk to us about what they're experiencing in the business world. So today's guest is Véronique Özkaya, is the CEO at DATAmundi, and she is an experienced leader in the business world, and we're looking forward to hearing all about your work journey, your professional journey, what's happening at DATAmundi. And then, of course, we all know the well-known and well-respected Bruno Herrmann. And Bruno is obviously recognised as an AI leader globally, and also Bruno works with International Achievers Group as our head of marketing and also as a strategic advisor, which, as you can imagine, I am very grateful to have that on board. My name is Paula McGrath. I own and run International Achievers Group, and we are a staffing solutions partner globally. So let's get started, if you're comfortable with that now. Veronica, if you're happy to tell us about you and your professional journey to date.
Thank you, Paula. Glad to be here. Nice to see you, Bruno.
Nice to see you too.
So I'm CEO at DATAmundi. What we do is that we're a human data services company. What does that mean? Is that we are this layer of human, highly curated, quality, multilingual, multimodal data that is used by frontier labs and enterprises to power and train and create new AI solutions and systems. So we're kind of the fuel going into that infrastructure.
Okay.
And I come originally, I would say, from the language industry, but I came to the language industry as a diplomat or a would-be diplomat. And the story started here in Dublin.
Yes.
I worked on the French embassy down on Aylesbury Road at the time, and my ambition was to become consul or even ambassador. And I had a bit of a cold shower experience because I realized after a few months that it was the most boring path for me. And it was just not moving. So my days were spent writing reports, and I understood that this was just also not going to be a career where I could have a progression that was going to be rapid, and I would have to also earn my stripes by being posted in various countries every 3 years. And that, you know, while I really liked the idea of traveling, I also thought that the goal was then to get back to Paris and work in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Okay.
And I thought, well, but my studies still were useful because they were in international politics and administration. And at the time, localization was starting in Dublin. So you had Microsoft that came here, et cetera, et cetera. I started by teaching French. Obviously, the private schools didn't have a need for very high credentials at the time. So I taught business French for a little while. And then I saw an ad for a job as a translator. I had to do a test translation. I thought I was amazing by asking a friend in the IT industry to explain to me all the concepts in the English text that I didn't understand very well. Gave my test and got hired. I got hired because I could spell French properly, not because of my deep understanding of IT. But what was really great is the company that hired me trained me.
Yeah.
So I went through all the possible jobs related to localization at the time, which was kind of a newish concept. So I translated, I edited, I DTP'd, I debugged, I rebuilt software. So all of this on different operating systems. So I really had to learn from all the angles of what goes into localizing complex products. And then I went into a management track, which started with linguistic management and managing teams. And then I got into commercial, and I became, chief revenue officer at different companies. So my path was from learning the business to getting into commercial roles and then into general management. And so I ran sales at Linebridge, then at Moravia, and then I got into general management in a smaller company where I met Bruno in Belgium. This company called Explanation, and I've always been a growth leader. I like to grow businesses. I like to fix businesses and make them grow. And so that aspect of strategy and a little bit of vision of where is the world going and how, with what I have in my hand in this organization, what can I do to make this a great company? So that's always been my drive.
What would you sort of say to the young 20-something yourself, about what are the skills that are needed to be that person that can focus on growth and excellence and all that stuff? So if you had a 23-year-old grad sitting in front of you, based on your own experience?
It would be a mix of two things. It would be a mix of objective skills, and I would say get skilled in finance earlier, get skilled in product management, in strategy. So these kind of skills that you can acquire, I would say get onto that. Don't just stay, let's say you work for an e-commerce company, you know everything about e-commerce. Learn these ancillary skills that are going to make you a stronger general leader.
Okay.
And of course, the obvious today is you've got AI tools that can also help you, learn faster, better. So that. But then the second thing would be about not soft skill, but about being bold and braver. So many people will say to me, why didn't you set up your own company? Personal circumstances, but also a bit of bravery. So that I would say I would be so much braver.
Okay.
Earlier.
Yeah.
And building this confidence, you can have that in you for sure. But I think this self-belief, it took me a little while to get there.
Sometimes I don't know that running your own business is about self-belief. I don't actually know whether it's that alone.
And the hard skills, though, come in handy because I've seen many owners of businesses that they might be the best linguist or the best baker or the best technician.
Yeah.
But if you don't have these skills that are going to help you balance your books or hire people and so on, you're going to make many mistakes along the way.
Yeah.
And I don't think that surrounding yourself as a younger business with top-notch experts is necessarily the path to follow. You should have a veneer of knowledge before you reinforce, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think it's very useful if you can identify that what you're listening to doesn't quite smell right or doesn't sound right, even if your skills are not deep enough to go into too in-depth of a challenge, but to have the ability to actually sit and listen to somebody and go, that doesn't sound right, that doesn't smell right. So it's back to what you're saying. I'm just agreeing with what you're saying.
No, exactly. And then just to circle back on this topic of, what sort of recommendation or suggestion would you share? I'm going to use your profile actually for a second as an example of T-shaped profile, because I think that today T-shaped profiles are really important, more than 10 years ago probably, or even 5 years ago. What I mean by T-shaped is that you have to be at least expert in one or several domains. Data, not a random example, but okay, that's data, or it can be, if it's in a certain industry, it can be life science, legal, etc. But at the same time, you need to be more horizontal. You need to be more collaborative, more engaging with other roles, which are typically not in your scope. And I could, your example is a perfect one. That's why I'm using it. You have, of course, this strong T-shaped profile because you have expertise, you have built your expertise in a number of different practices, domains and industries, but at the same time, you have developed your skills or your experience working with other roles in other functions, which might be, UX, which might be product management or content management, etc. So I guess my question is, knowing that, of course, T-shaped profiles are very important today, what would you give as a priority to someone who is maybe not in the 20s, but let's say in the 30s, with a few years of experience? What would be the priority you would recommend to actually go in this direction? Because we all know so many people who are in a certain role, they have a job, but sometimes they don't take this, calculated bravery to actually move further or higher or sideways, whatever. But okay, it's because it's human nature, I guess, that you cannot be brave all the time. But what would you say as a priority to that person with your experience, but also knowing the clients today? Because, of course, clients are kings. So it's one thing to be brave, but it's another thing to be brave
and practical,
according to what clients want. So what would be the main priority, if there is one?
I would start by saying, like, going forward is a must. And the reason I'm saying that is that staying in the same job or position and expecting that this is not going to change, or that you may change jobs and do exactly the same somewhere else, it's less and less likely. So that's the first thing. And that should be a strong motivation or drive to say, okay, I need to develop my skills so that I have transferable skills that I can apply maybe in another industry, another job. So I would start with that. Definitely depth in what you do. So let's say you work, back to the example of e-commerce, if you develop that depth, you should continue in that path, because that makes you an expert in a given domain. And then depending on the paths that you see are opening up to you, I would then develop the skills according to that. How do you figure out what these are? You have to listen to people, you have to ask questions, you have to immerse yourself, you have to be curious. When we were chatting earlier, I was mentioning that I'm involved in a deep tech company. It's got nothing to do with what I do in my day job.
Exactly.
And I have learned so much from a company that does deep immersive training where you're wearing haptic gloves and helmets and working with digital twins. I was not really aware of what digital twins were doing before. But this has opened my views onto possibilities. So that aspect of not being navel-gazing and really asking around you and asking people maybe that you've been following, whom you admire, whom you respect. If you ask people for a little bit of their time, they tend to be very open to that, and that kind of opens your horizon and may give you very good inspiration to what you could do next.
The other thing as well that I've seen over the years is from time to time people make mistakes. They make the wrong jump.
From time to time?
Yeah.
Or often enough.
Oh, that sounds like experience.
No, I've done it. I can tell you, I made the wrong choice when a company that I went to work for a long time ago. We haven't all done it, but a lot of some people, there are mistakes made, and if the mistake is made if you're working for an organisation, it's not the right fit for you. Be brave enough to move. Don't try to torture yourself and stick in an organisation that's not the right fit for you, in a role that's not the right fit. So that takes a certain bravery or sometimes a blind jump. Because I have seen people who hold on because they're too afraid. It's not because they think they're going to change the trajectory of the situation. And then it turns into a nightmare. An absolute nightmare. So yes, the thing about, where to jump and where to go next and what to look at next. People make mistakes, but that is not the end of the world.
And it's better to realize your mistake quickly.
Yes,
because a lot has to do also with company values and culture. And you don't necessarily know that before you join an organization. And then you understand the culture, not by what's written on the website mission page, but rather in how people work on a day-to-day basis, how they collaborate, they have each other's backs. So that is something. You're right. Like if it's the wrong bus, get off the bus, and
And sometimes people are missold at an interview,
of course,
and that's from both sides. And we won't get too much down that road. That's very much my life.
It's very true, and you just gave me the springboard to my question regarding the evolution in the business, because as a CEO of DATAmundi, you are exposed to that big change, transformation, disruption. Well, there are different words to label it. Of course, humans are still very much in the picture. So humans have not disappeared because of AI or because of any technology. Humans are there, but of course they play a different role. They develop different skills, etc. So this evolution in the business is driving also evolution in talent. Not just talent acquisition, but talent management. And DATAmundi has to manage a lot of new talent. Well, new. For some people it's new. For some other people like me, it's not new. But what is your what is your take on this business evolution, transformation, knowing that, of course, DATAmundi and what you do on every day, you are exposed to this transformation, this evolution, of course, from a people perspective, but how, for instance, the increased, attention or the increased dedication to data is also changing the business, because of course now data has become so much important, and so much more important than before, because of course generative AI, but in general data is everywhere. How do you see that in your daily job, to work with humans who have, just like you, who have to follow what customers, of course, again back to customers, what those customers are telling you to do?
So in the data business, because we're a human data company, it says it into what we do. The professional is at the center of what we do. But it is at a scale that is very little to do with what I used to, I was used to before, right?
Yeah.
So we're talking hundreds of thousands of contributors in different categories with different vetting processes, etc. Tech is a very important component there as a backbone to enable that scaling and that qualification and the quality control over the contributors for the work. And the work ranges from simple enough collection, let's say, of data, all the way to reinforcement learning and and fine tune. I mean, there's a lot of services that are where you would require very specific skills.
Yeah.
You do not let laymen, professional or humans, let's say, validate a clinical assistant for cardiology, right?
Yeah.
Please don't.
Right?
No.
I have pain in my chest. Oh, it might be indigestion. Maybe not, right?
Good example. I like it.
So this, when we look about contributors, so your supply chain, that is a completely different ballgame for us.
Yeah.
The muscle we need internally in order to manage these communities and the tech we need to manage this and the speed at which we have to work, it's completely different. So when I came to DATAmundi, we were not doing so much data. Now, like the vast majority of what we do is all about data. We flipped this very quickly and grew this very quickly. And our vendor management has a completely different face.
Of course. Yeah.
So we do have still vendor managers or community managers that come from our localization path, but we've had to really muscle up on that with different profiles and with different way of looking at things, and speed at their core. Speed and quality, these are the two motivators.
Yeah.
Because when a client says, I need people to for fraud detection, create physical mask of their faces to see if an iPad or a phone is going to recognize that as a real face or not. Think about the creativity you need to have. So you've got that aspect of creativity, you've got speed, and then you've got the depth. So that's been so human at the core for sure for us, because this is the driver of quality.
Yeah. Exactly.
And then internally, that's another thing, is if you think about that speed and quality, you need that mentality internally. So project managers are lucky enough that they are well equipped with tech. Tech does a lot of the navigation for you. However, they need to be super fast and super receptive to clients. So the client centricity, because why do you need all these masks? And does it matter that the ethnicities are different and the age group? You need to understand and ask the right question to understand what is the purpose, what is the use case.
Exactly.
If you just treat this like a transaction, it doesn't work. So that's also been that mindset shift internally that's been super interesting to staff for. And we see some people who've transitioned, and some were for whom this was just too mind-boggling.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I just, you mentioned there about the difference between leading and following, particularly around client centricity. And you're working in an organization that sort of is leading the charge and appears to have led the charge on the whole drive around data and data management. So in order to give you that position of, that leadership position that DATAmundi has at the moment, or hopefully will retain, how much of it has been you sort of leading when engaging with clients or following what they're asking you for? Do you know, or does it matter?
It's a mix of both.
Yeah.
You follow because
you respond because they've asked.
They are frontier labs and they're creating or improving models, and they tell you this is what we need. However, and I think this is super interesting, they also ask you, could we do this better?
Yeah, what do you think?
So that's that part where they ask you to evaluate a model. I'll give you like a concrete example. So we have one client, I'll take e-commerce, and they're creating a shopping assistant in a given country. Let's take Poland as an example. So they have scenarios, and they say, okay, you're going to find people in Poland who are going to test that shopping assistant. And these are the scenarios, but they also expect us to enhance these scenarios, to come up with like, you know what? Actually, when you're searching for a very nice Top Voices cup, there's also maybe a local or a dialect way, of saying cup in Polish, right? And we have missed that in the scenario. So you add that. So you've got also that consultative and this is all about quality, because the better the input, the better the output of the assistant. So you do follow, but clients are also expecting you, very similar to localization industry, to really, let's say, share with them this knowledge you've accumulated from working with different clients on different scenarios and say, these are best practices or things that we've learned on other clients. So
No, I understand that. And this is one of Bruno's favourite songs. This is where I would suggest is that you can justify value. Yeah. The real value, the value add. So it's one of your favourite topics.
Yeah, your example is perfect to describe how you add value, even if you don't create value immediately, but you add value once you are working on it, because obviously you cannot always create value from scratch. It would be very difficult because you have to work on something that has been already done by somebody else, successfully or not, but you have to sort of add your own value, and this is I think it's very relevant those days, last year and this year, because when I was talking to some language services suppliers, they were sometimes, of course, they were blaming AI for losing business, etc. So that's the usual, narrative. But some of them were also not blaming, but they were pointing out that some organizations, because of AI or because of technology in general, they were internalizing language management. So they were actually internalizing translation localization, because they were implementing a model that could do it. They were hiring, internal staff to do the job that external agencies were doing before. And I think, when I hear that, my typical response is, yes, but you can still find another sort of value to create, which is not what you are losing from the client because the client is taking it internally, but because, your client will need more capacity or more capabilities that are not in-house. And so you have to transform your operating model. But I even use another word, which I'm sure you will like. Well, sure. Hopefully you will like it. You have to align your operating model, not just to make sure that your operating model is in sync with your clients, but also that you do what you need to align it. And I think DATAmundi is a great example of this sort of alignment, because of course now every organization has to deal with data, language data or other types of data, and it's not like an option. It's not like something that can be done later. It has to be done now, today. Otherwise, you are behind the game. So, what is your secret sauce to actually align DATAmundi with client expectations?
Before I give the ingredients of the secret sauce,
it stops being secret.
I was thinking, as you were explaining that, I was thinking of a parallel with content or language industry and data. So 10 years ago, you would hear of big organization in the data world. What they were doing is that they were labeling images, computer vision. This is a cat, this is a car. And you would have thousands of people in different countries doing that in a very manual but really at scale way, right?
Yeah.
That got automated.
Yeah.
10, 15 years ago, you would have a contract to
know.
be translated, and you contacted an agency, and the PM gave you a quote after a day if you were lucky, or maybe you could even get a quote online at that time, right?
That's advanced.
And then it might take another day before you got your translation, or 2 days. Now, in 10 minutes, it's done online. So it means the business evolves. And if you're hanging on to this transactional translation work, I don't think you're going to see growth there.
Yeah, exactly.
On the contrary. So what we do is that, of course, we listen to our clients and we interact with them and we ask questions and we see where they're going. There's another two things we do. Number one is that we go to very specialized events.
Yep.
It's not our sales team that goes to these events. It's our data scientists. Because the people at these events, I mean, I would not have a clue about what they're really talking about, but they're actually talking about the next things they're going to work on.
right,
And it gets hyper technical. So it's profile like, data scientist or CTO comes from that background that would go there. And then we get a sense of, the big next thing is speech in whatever this area, right? And then the third thing we do is that we use tech. So we've developed our own agents that do a number of things that gives us a very, very good indication on where our clients are headed because of research papers, because of publications, etc. So we compile this bi-weekly, monthly report, which we read, like that's like a compulsory read from my C team, but also our commercial and senior operational teams, because that also gives us an indication of where it's headed. And that helps us really navigate where our service needs to evolve. And our client also, there's a vested interest for them in letting us know what are the next things they're going to work on, because they know that we need to qualify different types of resources. We need to assemble different types of services. So that's also a win-win for sharing. Now, one thing also maybe last that's super interesting is that you've got different levels of confidentiality. Some of the things these labs are working on is just like, we're talking about insourcing. It is just like, you cannot know about that, and we don't know about it. So one trend that we've seen recently, and we have a heritage in this, it's managed services.
Yeah.
So more and more we have clients that saying, okay, we're going to issue an RFP on managed services. And it's not to manage their localization program or have testers on site. It's really to have people on site doing data work in labs that are, sealed where you have 3 badges before you get to the vault.
You're their go-to specialists. That's what,
and because
that's, what
that's
it's about,
actually... When I'm talking about this heritage, so the language heritage has really helped us understand, of course, culture and context and way of thinking. And so we can really help the lab saying, well, AI 90% is in English and it thinks in English.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you take a multilingual model that has used translation to actually become a multilingual model, it's going to perform 20% less well than a model that's been actually trained on original language data.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, that's. I think it's a great point, because I think today, I know a number of people watching us or listening to us today are in the language industry. So there are project managers, there are linguists, terminologists, and I think that there are not enough people in that industry who have understood or who have accepted that language expertise could be more than what they are doing today. So if they are a project manager today, they might still be working in this transactional framework, receiving files and sending files to the client. But on the other hand, with the rise, and the rise is a soft word, the rise of language data, language expertise is really taken to the next level, because language expertise has been for many, many years, decades, I would say, has been limited to the space of translation, localization, and a bit of content creation. But now with language data, I think, the reason is in the word, language data. So you have the data value plus the language value in it. And I think that this is really, and I would like to hear from your experience with clients, how you convey that message, that language data is a mix of data expertise, domain expertise, and linguistic expertise. How do you convey that message that is not so easy to come across, to get across? Yeah.
Can I also expand on that? Is that, do the clients care about knowing that?
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Another parallel. You know, in the language industry, we had a lot of discussions about ROI and global deployments and how to get the return. It's a little similar. So 90% of AI is in English. Why? Because the center of gravity for labs has been the US. It's changing now. You've got China, of course, but you've got the UAE that's pouring trillions into
money.
So that already gives a bit more of a balanced perspective on AI because you've got different views of the world from different regions where, you know, all this money is being poured into AI. So that's that. But then we're talking about now adoption, right? And adoption, if you're a global corporation and you really want to enhance your productivity and you believe that AI tools is the way to enhance your productivity, if you limit this to English-speaking countries, your deployment and your adoption is going to be limited. So you really have this argument that if you want a successful rollout, you're going to have to be addressing your users in the language they're comfortable in. I mean, a French accountant is not going to be asking a automated knowledge assistant in English. And there's been so many documentation of failed AI adoptions because of data not being correct, not be right.
Usable.
So take some of the services we do that's like in evaluation, red teaming. Red teaming, you're trying to make a system fail. This is essentially what you're doing.
Yep.
Okay.
So let's say that you ask a question in English. They're like, how do I make a incendiary device? We hope that the AI, the AI in English will say, I cannot answer this question. It's being programmed to say, no, you're crossing line. What if you ask this in French and it tells you how to do it? So red teaming is about that. It's like, that's an example in safety where you're actually testing the system. You're using slang. You're using local idioms in order to see if that system is going to break down in different languages. So to your point, Bruno, who knows this? But linguists.
Yeah, exactly.
People who live and breathe in a given location and country and know this, right?
Exactly.
So if you are somebody who has a deep knowledge of languages and culture, and then you have a domain expertise, really your skill set is very portable or transferable.
Exactly.
And you need to think about this. And I would just encourage linguists who are listening, you know what? Read up on this. Read up on all the use cases where your skills can be applicable. And this is like, I call this the bottomless lake data for AI.
Exactly.
Because think about all the real world scenario. If you're creating a model to support your salespeople, right? You're a salesperson, you're going to a meeting in north of Dublin. We've all seen the weather today. We hope that like your agent is going to calculate how long it's going to take you to go in this weather to the other side of Dublin. And so you've got all of these parameters. So this is a real life application. And the real life applications are just endless because we're only at the beginning of adoption.
And all those different industries.
Right.
All those different industries. And
Regulation.
all those different parts of the world.
Compliance. Like you will need people who have knowledge of common law, civil law, all of these things. So let's say that the pattern we've seen for 20, 30 years in localization, and I don't think we've been mega successful in making this like an omnipresent service in the layer of organization. I actually think with AI, there's a much larger chance for people with linguistic background to actually immerse themselves into into these deployments.
Well, AI is just mainstream as well. It's
It
not
is, yeah.
just industry specific the way in the past.
It is, and there is one more opportunity, which I'm sure DATAmundi is very familiar with. It's actually the fact that, well, if you look at the metrics from last year, you see a number of projects that have failed. AI-powered projects. And, I think that in 99% of those cases, people, so the decision makers, the practitioners, were blaming the models for not doing a great job, which is the sort of human reaction to, okay, let's look at who is at the end of the chain. And the end of the chain is the model with producing the output. But of course, there is only 1% of people, and I'm generous with 1% of people who are actually looking at what happened upstream, not just look at the model, because the model was actually right as such, but it was badly trained with bad data. And so moving upstream is another opportunity for people, of course, with language, with linguistic background and experience, but I would say for anyone involved in AI to look at data from day one, from the outset of any project, and say, do we have the right data? Right meaning relevant, accurate, etc. Because you can have the I would say the best model, large model like ChatGPT or small model, if it's not trained properly, it will be garbage in, garbage out. We've known that for decades with other technologies. So I think that this sort of evaluation of data effectiveness is still missing in many projects. I can see that on my own experience, is that many people are rushing to the models, training the models, evaluating the models. But there are too few people still today, which is a shame in my opinion, too few people looking or moving upstream and say, well, let's look at the data. Let's dive into this data pool and let's look at who is creating the data, who is managing the data, who is curating the data. So I think, moving upstream is another big opportunity for a number of people to say, well, instead of focusing or being obsessed with models, which is necessary, I don't disagree with that, but let's look also at what is done upstream. And there are quite a number of roles today that are, talent is needed in those fields. It's hard to find. I think Paula will not disagree with me. It's difficult to find the talent to be able to do that, right, Paula?
It really does depend. Honestly, it does depend. There are times where if the criteria of the job specification is so narrow that there's only two whole people in the whole world that actually does it in the first place, they're impossible. They're impossible to find, and we're the whole time chasing after them. But if there is a reasonable expectation about what's there, what experience is needed, why an individual would consider leaving their existing role, which is safe, well paid, and all sorts of lovely add-ons, to go and work with your organisation. There's not enough effort, and I know sometimes it's hard to find people. Most of the time, it's not hard if there's a reasonable expectation and a reasonable discussion. But what I don't believe that most organisations put enough time into employer branding from an employee's experience perspective. That's now I know that's a very biased opinion because of the business that I'm in, but somebody brings out the latest wonderful service offering or the latest wonderful product or the latest add-on to their tech solution. And everybody's running around and putting money in and getting the marketing people around developing that. And then they sit back and go, okay, we actually need 15 people to make money out of this now, please. And there's go, Mr. or the talent acquisition people, or sometimes use an outside agency to help them with it. Off you go now, get me those 15 people. Not an ounce of time, money. A lot of the time it doesn't need money. It needs a bit of time to actually be the proper brand ambassador for your organisation. Because the truth is, you don't want the people that can't get jobs elsewhere. You just don't. And that's a terrible thing, but it's the truth. But you want the people that are at the top of their game. So But the people at the top of the game want to work with an organisation that is at the top of their game.
Yes.
But
It's human.
Well, it's what you
It's
want.
human.
I mean, it's like attracts like.
Yeah,
And that's where it's the
exactly.
best pairing works.
Yeah.
We spoke about sometimes people don't, it's the wrong pairing. But most of the times, the right pairing is like attracts like.
Yeah.
And I'm not necessarily talking about the mirror. Everybody in the company looks the very same. That's not what I'm talking about. But in relation to ambition and passion and clarity and flexibility around deliverables and, reasonable flexibility around deliverables. But nowhere near enough time is put in by most organisations around brand profiling to make sure you have a better chance to get the person you want. So I know that's not the question you asked. And the answer to the question you asked is sometimes it's hard to get them and most times it's not, because that's what we do all day.
I was reading that question because I remember last year I was kindly invited by DATAmundi to a series of webinars. And I remember I started by saying that for me, from my perspective and from my experience, it was, the big challenge, the main challenge still is today, to actually connect the dots. And when I say the dots, it is the people, the processes and the technology. And so that's why, we decided to do 3 webinars instead of 1, because there was not enough time to bundle everything in one hour. So I'm just curious, again, if you had some advice to give to a client or to, a potential talent for you, how would you describe the benefits of running operations within DATAmundi, and how do you see the value of creating those dots that I explained during the webinars? Because I talked a lot about myself, but I want now to hear it from DATAmundi.
So when you're running operations in a company like ours, think that we're, again, going back to 2 essentials. Some core skills that, you should understand the logic of supply chain management and quality. So these, if you have that base, and that base doesn't necessarily need to come from the same industry.
No,
These are kind
I
of
agree
transferable
with that.
skills. And then, so there's 3 parts, not 2. So the second part is your mindset, because you better like uncertainty. You better like fast pace. You better be creative. Otherwise, if you're expecting a kind of 9 to 5 easy job, so you need to really thinking like, I'm going to have to solve problems, because those clients, they don't have time for you to think about a solution and come back in 2 months' time. That doesn't work. We have clients where we say, okay, March 1st, you need this for this program. It's going to be March 1st. And we're then back to alignment. The people, the processes, the tech.
Yeah.
And we tell our head of tech, 1st of March, we have this agreement. This is not an expectation. This is an agreement. Not the 2nd of March, And then if we're lucky, 28th of February, it's ready, right? So you do need that that mindset. The third part, which I believe is really key, is also this curiosity, this willingness to always sharpen your tools. I'm blessed that we have a great COO and coming from the localization services, and now is one of our top voices in data. But I know that she has worked incredibly hard at educating herself, spending time with clients, spending time with, and if I look at the recruitment she's made in the last year, she's hired many people from the data industry. So we have a very good blend of people who've transitioned into data, but also we have that talent that came that for the things we didn't know that made us raise the game. So this curiosity is the third part. So if you're at a client or on the supply side, whatever path you're taking, if you know what are your core skills, if you've got the right mindset, and then you've got that third element of curiosity, I think that's what really makes the best recruit. And then when we hire people, we don't sell them like roses and little flowers in the field.
You should.
We don't exaggerate. They know it's fun.
Yeah, of course.
They know it's going to be an incredibly energizing environment. They know that you will be recognized for your work. They know that there's an incredible team spirit and this alignment, right? But they also know that they're going to have to sharpen themselves. And I speak to a lot of our staff. I have this kind of roster where, how are things going? And tell me what you're hearing. And I had somebody the other day who runs our quality, And actually, she was saying she had come to us kind of recently and she said, I came because of such and such person. And I said, and what in that person made you want to work with her? I said, I learn.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And that was really interesting.
Absolutely.
And she was saying, and when we have a good meeting, I get the tap on the back. But if I was not on my A game, I also get that. And actually, that feedback makes
what
me
you
grow.
need.
Yeah.
I
Well,
get that.
I have a very quick question just to follow up on what you said. You mentioned 3 components. Which one is going to be most challenging for you in 2026?
Mindset.
Mindset, okay.
From whom?
From I think from all of our resources to keep thinking we need to keep on changing and evolving. I mean that's the thing. Yes we can. Some of the things we're being asked to do, you're like, not possible. Okay, well, if client thinks it's possible, let's find a way. And often, and that comes back to being really rapid on the tech front.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you cannot scale. I mean, we see like what's expected now. You need to have a very strong tech backbone in order to enable this. You can't have friction in the process.
No.
Back to processes. It's like, again, another parallel to localization where we used to do big translation, little transaction, right? Big projects, 18 months. And then it turned to small projects, high number of transactions. If you didn't automate those transactions, you were dead underwater.
Yeah.
No,
What part of the world do you think the best or most progressive tech is being developed, or the fastest, or what do you think?
Of course, the US is still leading because, I mean, if you just look historically, 2000 internet, data centers, AI, frontier labs, etc. However, we're definitely seeing an impetus now in Europe to. Sorry, but finally,
better late than never.
Finally, yes, and you also seeing that kind of at EU level on what kind of businesses are funded and supported, etc. Because they have to do something.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they still really, and especially with all of what's happening in the environment, it's like, okay, we kind of need a little bit of a standalone position here. So we're starting to see Europe wake up a bit. I think sleeping giant for a little long. Asia, because of our business, we're not so involved with the labs there. I mean, so we would be more kind of North America and Europe focused.
Yeah, that's very interesting. You mentioned about Europe. Well, for me, in my daily job, it's Asia who is leading. But again, because of their economy, which is also better than the western part of the world, so there are other reasons why Asia can be really strong. They don't have the legacy like in the US, or they don't have the framework like in Europe, but they have other assets financially, most of all. But just to go back to the mindset that Paula also highlighted, and this is a message for the people at DATAmundi, is going to be a groovy year this year. So it's going to be
We sound like we're the 1970s.
but going back to this mindset, of course. You should of course consider people from different background, from different parts of the world. To your point, Paula, but also you should consider people with different, I would say, different. I wouldn't say not just professional background, but also with different personal approaches. Yeah, there are more than one. So. Is it easy? I guess the answer is no, but I want to hear from you. Is it easy to find those people who might have the right professional background, who might be coming from a part of the world where there is a lot of talent, but who are not sort of meeting your requirements because they have this very personal drive that tells you that person that person may be a very good professional fit, but not so much a corporate fit.
Is that a cultural mix?
Cultural,
the cultural mix you're
the
speaking
cultural.
about. Well, cultural mix is always
Because it's so important in different parts of the world as well. Just to circle back on what Paula said, I worked a lot with Asian people and a little bit with Canadians. They may work in the same industry. They have different cultures. That is changing a lot.
For sure. And by nature, we have people from so many nationalities and cultural background that it makes it a complex environment to manage in any case.
Yeah.
It's down to what your company stands for and what the culture of your company is about. And when I say that, again, it's not what's kind of written on the mission page, but it's rather like how you behave on a daily basis. So we have some, let's say, parameters of what good culture is. But most importantly, what don't you tolerate?
Yeah.
I think that's key.
And this is really, really important. So there's a very open approach to saying, you know what happens in this meeting or this interaction, not okay. And I'll tell you why it's not okay. And what I would expect from the people having this conversation is the openness to that discussion and not putting the walls up. And back to then your question of somebody maybe from a different... And you got to calibrate this because people may take offense.
Yes.
So you got to understand the perspective from the other person, but that kind of feedback loop is essential because otherwise you cannot have a functioning organization. No. You're not going to always have harmony, but you always got to focus on alignment.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I want to thank Véronique. That was just so enjoyable, but I always enjoy speaking with you. I don't see you very often, but I enjoy speaking with you. And again, Bruno, as always,
thank you.
Actually, invaluable insights. And Véronique, as we have already mentioned, is the CEO at DATAmundi. We very much appreciate your contribution and your time to all this. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It was my pleasure to be here in person. Wonderful. Thank you for having me.